The evening bus hisses to a stop. A woman steps off with her feet on fire. She has been cooking in another family's kitchen since 7 this morning, and when she walks through her own front door, she doesn't sit down. She ties her apron back on because the sun is already dipping, and she's got 6 hungry children racing the streetlights home. You remember the rule. Every one of us does. Be home before the streetlights come on. That light on the corner was the clock of the whole neighborhood, and we ran from it like it was chasing us. But nobody ever told you the other half of that story. While you were racing that light home, your mother was racing it too, from the other side of the window, and her deadline was harder than yours. A hot supper on the table before you hit the door. No microwave, no takeout, no, we'll order something. One woman, one sinking sun, one black cast iron skillet, and 30 minutes to put down a supper that stuck to your ribs. Tonight I'm counting down 25 of them. And let me be straight with you before somebody types it in the comments. This is not the all-day food. The oxtails, the neck bones, the greens simmering since morning, the red beans, those took hours, and we'll honor them another night. Tonight is the fast food, the beat-the-dark food. The suppers a bone-tired woman could throw down between the bus stop and the street light and make you believe she'd been cooking all day. Number 4 cooks in 2 minutes a side, and half of you are going to make a face when I name it. Number 3 is the steak she served on the weeks there was no money for steak. And number one is the supper the whole block could hear. I'll explain that when we get there. Let's go. The light's already warming up. Number 25. We start with the sound. That first hiss of thick-cut bologna hitting hot cast iron. 4 minutes later, it's blistered, browned, and puffed up in the middle like it's proud of itself. And here's your first fight of the night. Did your mama cut the little slits in the edges so it fried flat? Or did she let it curl up into a bowl and fill the cup with mustard? Don't lie. I'll know. On white bread with yellow mustard and maybe a slice of that government cheese. That was not a snack. That was supper. Hot, salty, ready in 5 minutes for pennies a slice. Grown men ate it after double shifts. Children begged for it by name. And that's the whole thesis of tonight, right there in one sandwich. She took the cheapest thing in the icebox, put fire and cast iron to it, and made it something you're still thinking about 50 years later. Slits or curl, comments, go. Number 24. Now here's what nobody tells you about Spam. It was the fastest meat in the house because it was already cooked in the can. No thawing, no raw meat to worry over with tired hands. You sliced it, you fried it, and in 5 minutes those edges caramelized into something crispy, salty, and shameless. That came up out of the Depression and the war years, when shelf-stable meat meant security you could stack in a cupboard. For a mother watching both the clock and the budget, a can that kept for a year and cooked in 5 minutes wasn't mystery meat. It was a plan. Fried Spam over rice, maybe with an egg on top on a good week, carried a whole lot of families through a whole lot of tight Tuesdays. Folks love to look down on it now. Those same folks never had to feed 6 children in 30 minutes on a domestic's wages. She did. It worked. End of story. Number 23. This one is for everybody who thinks nothing in the house means nothing for supper. A can of tomatoes, or the ones she put up herself last August. A knob of butter. A pinch of sugar to tame the sharpness. Salt and pepper. 15 minutes bubbling in the skillet while the rice steamed, and then poured over the top, thick and sweet, tangy and glowing red. The rice drank it up and went almost custardy underneath. A piece of leftover cornbread on the side, and you had a full plate from a cupboard most folks would call empty. Here's the part I need you to feel. She never served this like an apology. No, sorry, it's just tomatoes and rice tonight. It came to the table like it belonged there, because it did. Half the skill in that kitchen wasn't cooking. It was conviction. You ate what she made like it was chosen, because the way she served it, it was. Number 22. Every fast kitchen has a dead tired setting. The supper she could make with her eyes half closed and her feet screaming. This was it. Potatoes and eggs. One skillet, 15 minutes, and 2 ingredients that were always in the house. The trick was in the knife. Dice the potatoes small. Small pieces cook fast, that's just physics. Fry them golden in a little grease, then crack the eggs right in and scramble everything together till it sets up hot and hearty. Starch to fill you, eggs for protein, 1 pan to wash. And listen, there were nights when this humble little skillet was the difference between a family that ate and a family that didn't. Nobody photographed it, nobody wrote it down, but ask anybody who grew up on potato and eggs what it tasted like, and watch their eyes go somewhere else for a second. That's not nostalgia, that's gratitude. Number 21. Now watch the arithmetic, because this dish is a math problem our mothers solved every week. 1/2 pound of ground beef, 6 people at the table. That doesn't divide until you stretch it through a skillet of rice. Brown the beef with onion, stir in the rice, a little tomato, water, lid on. And 20 minutes later, every grain in that pan tastes like beef. The meat she could afford seasoned the starch she could afford, and the whole thing came out one supper instead of a small portion of meat and a pile of plain rice. Every child at that table thought they were eating a beef dinner. What they were actually eating was their mother's genius, stretched, seasoned, and served hot with 1 pan to wash. Folks call this kind of cooking poverty food. I call it engineering, and I'd put her math up against anybody's. Hold the countdown a minute. I want to talk about that light. Nobody on the block owned a wristwatch worth trusting, and there wasn't a phone in your pocket. There was the sun, and there was that street light on the corner. The writer Heather McTeer Toney said it the way every one of us remembers it. Like generations of black children before her and after her, she had to be in the house before the streetlights came on. That was the law. And under the law was love. It was how a mother kept her babies close and counted and safe before dark could bring trouble to the door. But here's what we couldn't see from out there in the street. That light had 2 congregations. We answered it with our feet. She answered it at the stove, because when that light hummed on and we came pouring through the door hollering that we were starving, supper couldn't be starting. It had to be done. And one more thing while we're here. On some blocks, on the best nights, the children didn't even need the light to know it was time. There was a sound that came out of a kitchen window and traveled faster than dusk. And when you heard it, you ran home without being told. I'm going to tell you what that sound was at number 1. Don't let me forget. Number 20, salmon and eggs. And here's the secret that made it a 10-minute supper. The salmon in that can was already cooked. Pressure cooked right in the tin at the cannery, so she wasn't cooking fish. She was warming fish and setting eggs around it. That's why a mother could put real protein on the table in the time it took the percolator to finish. Flake the can into hot grease, onions if she had a minute, eggs over the top, fold it soft. Over grits or with toast, it ate like a payday breakfast for supper. Rich, savory, satisfying, and don't skip past what that can mean. Cheap, kept forever in the cupboard and full of the kind of nourishment a working family needed most at the end of a long day. Some folks grew up thinking salmon and eggs was a Saturday morning dish. On the fast blocks, it was Tuesday supper, because Tuesday was when the tired hit hardest. Number 19, corned beef hash. And this dish has one commandment: leave it alone. Break the corned beef into the skillet with diced potatoes and onion, press it down flat with a spatula, and then don't touch it. The hardest part of the whole recipe is patience, because that untouched bottom is where the crust happens. Brown, crunchy, caramelized against the hot iron. Stir it too soon and you've got warm mush. Wait, and you got a supper with a crackling bottom and a tender middle that eats like it came off a diner flat top. Slide a fried egg on top and let the yolk run down into it. That's the whole show. Hash was the nothing goes to waste supper. Canned meat or Sunday's scraps. Yesterday's potatoes, 1 onion, 15 minutes. Our mothers didn't call it repurposing. They didn't call it anything. They just never threw food away, and hash was the proof, crisped golden and gone by 7. Number 18, skillet corn, fried corn if that's your people. And the whole dish lives in one move most folks never learn. After you cut the kernels off, you take the back of the knife and scrape the cob. That starchy white corn milk that comes off, that's the treasure. That's what turns a pan of fried corn creamy with not one drop of cream in it. Kernels, corn milk, a spoon of bacon grease, salt, a pinch of sugar if the corn was stubborn, 10 minutes in a hot skillet, popping and sizzling, and summer itself was on the table. Fresh corn is already tender. It barely wants any fire at all, which made this the fastest taste of the garden a tired woman could serve. If you only ever had corn from a can, I'm not judging you, but I am telling you that you've been missing the real one, and it takes 10 minutes to fix that. Number 17. Now pay attention, because this is the same vegetable at 2 different speeds. Boiled cabbage, the pot kind, takes the better part of forever. But fried cabbage, chopped rough, thrown in hot grease with a little scrap of smoked meat, tossed hard, 20 minutes and it comes out silky, sweet, browned at the edges, and tasting like it cooked all afternoon. High heat is the trick. The skillet does in 20 minutes what the pot needs 2 hours for, and the browning, that's flavor the boiling pot never even meets. A whole head of cabbage cost next to nothing and fed everybody with cornbread to push it. And here's the honest tell of a fast kitchen. When you grew up and found out some families cooked cabbage for hours, you were confused because Mama's was better and hers beat the street light. Same leaf, different clock. Her way wins. Number 16. Let's settle the okra argument once and for all. Everybody who hates okra hates it boiled, slick and slippery in a pot. But that's not tonight's okra. Tonight's okra is sliced into coins, shaken in seasoned cornmeal, and scattered into hot grease, where that coating crisps up in seconds and the slip never gets a chance to happen. 15 minutes, garden to plate. The cornmeal shell shatters, the inside stays green and tender, and children who swore on their lives they hated okra stood at the stove, stealing it off the draining paper, burning their fingers and going back for more. It grew like a weed in southern heat. It cost nothing, and fried fast like this, it turned into the crunchiest thing on the table. 1 vegetable, 2 reputations, and the skillet's version is the one that made converts. If you're still on team hate okra, you were served the wrong okra. Come home. We'll leave the light on. Number 15. Before this dish had a movie named after it and a place on restaurant menus at $14 a plate, it was a Tuesday night rescue mission. End of summer, frost coming, a vine full of tomatoes that were never going to turn red in time. She refused to lose them, so she sliced them thick, dredged them in seasoned cornmeal, and fried them crisp. And here's why the green one fries better than the red one ever could. It's firm and it's tart. It holds its shape in hot grease where a ripe tomato collapses, and that sour bite cuts the richness of the frying fat like it was designed for it. 15 minutes, and the almost wasted became the first thing gone. Eaten hot, standing right at the stove before they ever saw a plate. That was the real serving suggestion. The restaurants can keep the $14. The original was free, fast, and hers. Stop with me again, because I've been saying she was tired for 10 minutes now, and you deserve to know exactly how tired. For generations, the most common job in America for a black woman was domestic work, cooking and cleaning in somebody else's house, which means the woman racing the streetlight had, in the plainest terms, already cooked supper once that day for another family in another kitchen for wages that barely covered the bus ride between the two. There was a woman named Dorothy Bolden, an Atlanta maid for about 40 years, who went on to organize thousands of domestic workers to fight for their dignity. And she laid her day out in her own words. Get up at 4 a.m. to leave home by 6 a.m. and be on the job by 8 a.m., perform all those duties necessary to the proper management of a household for 8 hours, leave there by 4 p.m. to be home by 6 p.m., where I would do the same things I've done all over again for my own family. The same things, all over again, for her own family. The historian Rebecca Sharpless, who spent years studying these women's lives, put it plain. Everything that Cook endured, she endured for the family waiting at home. That skillet supper wasn't the leftover of her day. It was the point of her day. So understand what those 30 minutes really were. They weren't a shortcut. They were a second shift, worked on aching feet for no pay, for the only employer she truly loved, and she clocked in every single evening without being asked. Hold that in your chest for the rest of this countdown, because the food's about to get better, and now you know what it cost. Number 14, fried potatoes and onions. And if you closed your eyes on any block in America at 6 in the evening, this is the smell that found you. It came out of every third window. It was the neighborhood supper bell before anybody rang one. The speed was in the slice, thin as she could get them with a knife older than you, because a thin slice cooks through in minutes while it crisps at the edge, and the onions collapse sweet alongside. Salt, pepper, a heavy hand of patience while they brown. That's the entire recipe, and it hasn't needed improving in 100 years. A 50-pound sack of potatoes cost almost nothing and sat in the corner like a promise. We will always have supper. With a fried egg on top or cornbread on the side, this was a complete meal in 20 minutes. Humble as dirt, beloved as anything on this list. Some suppers don't need a story. They need a bigger skillet. Number 13. Now I owe you honesty, because I promised it. Cornbread bakes about 25 minutes, so it bends tonight's rule. But it stays on this list for one reason. It's hands off. The oven did the work while her hands did everything else. It didn't cost her time. It ran alongside her time. And the sound tells you if she did it right. The skillet goes in the oven empty with grease until it's screaming hot, and when the batter hits it, it sizzles. That sizzle is the crust being born, dark, crackling, fried not baked at the bottom, the kind no shiny new pan can make. Cornmeal, buttermilk, and egg, pennies around. Cornbread was the partner to half this countdown, crumbled in, sopped through, split and buttered, and the pan mattered. Which reminds me, we need to talk about that skillet itself before we hit the top 10. Soon. First, number 12. Smothered potatoes, the fried potato's soft-spoken cousin, and a lesson in the single most underrated tool in the fast kitchen, the lid. Same thin slices, same onions, but now a splash of water or broth, and the cover goes on. And that trapped steam cooks those potatoes nearly twice as fast as open frying, while they melt together into something rich and tender and gravied in their own starch. Smothered is one of the great words our people gave American cooking. Cooked down, covered until tender and wrapped in its own sauce. Done thin and quick like this, it's a 20-minute supper that eats like a slow one. And notice something. Soft food mattered. For the babies, for the elders at the table, for anybody whose teeth had been waiting on a dentist visit that wages kept postponing. She cooked for every mouth in the house, all in one pan, without a word about why. Tenderness in that kitchen was both a texture and a policy. Number 11. And here's the fast answer to number 13. Hot water cornbread, the cornbread with no oven and no weight. Cornmeal, salt, boiling water. Stir it stiff, shape it wet-handed, and fry the patties in hot grease. 10 minutes, crackling crisp outside, soft and steaming in the middle. This is old bread, older than the stove it's cooked on. The story goes the field version, the hoe cake, got its name from being cooked on the flat of a garden hoe over open fire. However exact that story is, the food historian Michael Twitty puts his finger on the truth underneath it. This was bread made quick and cheap by people whose time was never their own. Fast bread, born of stolen hours, and perfected anyway. She could fry these while the rest of supper finished, and the children hovered like gulls, taking the first ones straight off the paper, tossing them hand to hand because they were too hot to hold and too good to put down. Number 10. Shrimp and grits. And before anybody says that's restaurant food, let me take it back for its rightful owners. Down in the Low Country, in the Gullah Geechee communities of the Carolina and Georgia coast, this was a working supper. They called it breakfast shrimp, and it went wherever the clock needed it. Here's why it belongs on a fast list. Shrimp are the quickest protein there is. 3-4 minutes in a hot skillet, and they're done. Pink, curled, sweet. And for families who live by the water, they came out of the creek by their own hands, which made the fanciest-looking supper on this countdown one of the cheapest. Quick grits underneath, pan dripping, spooned over, 15 minutes flat. The Gullah Geechee people carried their rice and water knowledge across the ocean from West Africa and kept it alive against everything. So when you see this dish selling for $22 downtown, remember whose kitchen it left and how fast it used to be and who taught this country to make it at all. Number 9. And I need you to watch what happens in the pan after the meat comes out, because it's about to run this whole countdown. Streak a lean, salt-cured side meat, streaked with thin ribbons of lean, cheaper than bacon and twice as proud. Slice it thin. Fry it crisp in minutes. Now, the pan. Don't you dare wash that pan. Those brown bits and drippings left behind. A spoon of flour goes in, a splash of milk, a wooden spoon moving, and in 3 minutes flat, that empty skillet turns out a rich, savory gravy from what most folks would rinse down the drain. That move right there is the fast mother's secret weapon. She could make gravy from a pan's memory of meat. Streak a lean, crisp with that gravy over rice or a biscuit, a supper for pennies that ate like Sunday. And keep your eye on that gravy move. You'll see it again at number 4, at number 3. And at number 2, she had one weapon. She never missed with it. Told you we'd get here. Stop one last time for the only member of this cast that isn't food, the skillet itself. One pan fried the fish, baked the cornbread, smothered the potatoes, built the gravy. One pan meant one fire to mind and one thing to wash at 9 o'clock on feet that had been standing since 4 in the morning. In a fast kitchen, that pan wasn't a tool, it was a teammate. And cast iron holds a kind of receipt. Every supper cooked in it seasons it. Fat baked into the iron, layer over layer, year over year, until the surface goes black and glassy and slicker than anything sold in a box. Decades of cooking written into the metal, which is why nobody threw one away and why they got handed down, mother to daughter, grandmother to grandchild. A pan that had already made 10,000 suppers, passed on with the expectation of 10,000 more. The food historian Michael Twitty says he's not a chef. He calls himself a grandma cook and says his cast iron pots are the giveaway. That's exactly right, and it's exactly who these women were. When she cooked in that skillet, she wasn't cooking alone. Every woman who'd ever seasoned it was standing at that stove with her. Top 8 now. The hot suppers, the ones with gravy on them. And that sound I promised you, it's coming. Number 8. 2 fried chickens lived in our tradition, and only one of them could beat a street light. Sunday chicken, the whole bird, the big platter, the long afternoon, that one stays home tonight. This is weeknight chicken. The small pieces, the thin pieces, wings, thin thighs, a breast split in half, because small and thin is what cooks through in 15-20 minutes of hot, shallow grease. Seasoned flour, one good shake, laid in the skillet, turned once. No thermometer. She read the bubbles and the sound, and she was never wrong. Golden, crackling, done before the table was even set. The scholar Psyche Williams Forson wrote a whole book on what fried chicken meant in black women's hands. Income, independence, dignity, power, all true on Sunday. But on a Tuesday, fried fast for hungry children, it meant something simpler and just as large. Even on a weeknight, even worn out, she could still make the good thing, and the house smelled like proof. Number 7. The payday supper that didn't need a payday. Salmon croquettes. And this one comes with real history. During the Depression, the government moved to keep cheap canned salmon flowing, and that little can settled in at around a nickel. Pressure-cooked protein. Shelf-stable for years, waiting in the cupboard like an ace up the sleeve. And remember number 20. The fish in that can is already cooked, so a croquette isn't cooking salmon. It's binding it with an egg, onion, a handful of cornmeal or crushed crackers, and browning it. 15 minutes, start to plate. Crisp gold shell, tender pink middle. With rice or grits and something green, croquettes felt like an occasion and cost like a Tuesday, which is exactly why they showed up on both. If your mama made them, you can smell this paragraph right now. So settle it in the comments. Cornmeal or cracker crumbs in the mix. And what sauce, if any, went on top? Every family's answer is different, and every family is certain. Number 6. The butcher practically gave these away. Livers and gizzards, the parts other folks turned their noses up at. And that was their mistake and our mother's gain. Because a chicken liver is small, tender, and fast, dredged in seasoned flour, it fries crisp outside and creamy inside in just a few minutes. Gizzards, sliced thin and fried hot, brought the deep, satisfying chew. Piled over rice with the pan dripping spooned across, this was a rich, iron-heavy, stick-to-you supper for pocket change. The whole waste-nothing philosophy of our kitchens, fried golden in one pan. And I'll say the quiet part, plenty of children who hated liver clean this plate because a crisp crust and hot rice forgive everything. The market sold those parts cheap because it didn't understand them. She bought them because she did. Nothing on the bird was beneath her skill, and nobody at her table left hungry. Number 5. Some suppers feed the belly. This one fed the mood. Smoked sausage, sliced into coins, thrown in the skillet with sliced peppers and onions. 20 minutes later, the sausage is browned, the vegetables are soft and sweet with char at the edges, and the whole house smells like somebody's celebrating something. The shortcut is built into the sausage. It comes fully cooked and fully seasoned from the smokehouse. She wasn't cooking it so much as waking it up, browning it, letting it smoke and garlic season the peppers and onions for free. No gravy needed. The sausage brought its own. Over rice, it landed on the table looking like a Friday even when it was a Wednesday. Colorful, glistening, generous. And that mattered. A supper that looked joyful did something for a tired house that nutrition charts can't measure. That ring of sausage in the icebox wasn't groceries. It was insurance against a gray week. Number 4. The one from the cold open. 2 minutes aside. That's not an exaggeration. That's the recipe. Beef liver, sliced thin, dredged in seasoned flour, laid in a screaming hot skillet. 2 minutes, flip, 2 minutes, out. Any longer and it toughens, which means the fastest way is also the right way. The clock and the quality agree. Onions first, cooked down soft and sweet, liver in and out. And then the pan. You knew it was coming. Flour into those drippings, a splash of liquid, 3 minutes of the wooden spoon. The secret weapon rides again, and a rich brown gravy goes over liver and onions both. Now here's the fight I promise. Liver splits every family straight down the middle, and I can already feel some of you making the face. But it was cheap, it was 2 minutes aside fast, and it carried more iron and nourishment than anything else that money could touch. Love it or couldn't stand it. Declare yourself in the comments. Both sides get to be right. One side got seconds. Number 3. The steak she served when there was no money for steak. Cube steak. Poor man's steak. And the speed was built in at the butcher counter. That cross-hatched cut had already been run through the tenderizer, the machine's teeth breaking down every tough fiber, which means a cut that should need hours of braising instead fries tender in minutes. The work was pre-done. She just had to be smart enough to know it. She was. Dredge, fry, set aside, and the pan one more time. Onions down soft, flour into the drippings. And here the secret weapon does its greatest trick. A deep brown onion gravy that turns the cheapest beef in the case into a steak dinner. Smothered over rice or mashed potatoes, 25 minutes total. A man came home from a long shift and sat down to steak and gravy. The budget said that was impossible. Her skillet said otherwise, and the skillet won. Don't call it poverty food. Call it what it was. A magic trick performed nightly. One pan, no applause expected. Number 2. Let me draw the honest line one last time. Smothered pork chops. The ones that braise low and slow till they fall apart. That's the weekend dish, and it is not this one. This is the thin chop, the fast chop. Dredged. Fried a few minutes aside to a golden crust. Done in 20 minutes because thin is the whole trick. Chops out, pan speaks, and for the final time tonight, the secret weapon, flour into the drippings, milk and slow black pepper with a heavy hand, a creamy gravy, 3 minutes, poured over those crusts until the plate looks like mercy. Rice or cornbread underneath to catch what runs. This was the supper that ended hard days, the one that made a rented kitchen feel like a homestead, made a Tuesday feel handled, made children believe everything was fine because it tasted like everything was fine. One supper left, and it's the one you could hear from the street. Listen. Number one, close your eyes, and it's a summer evening, 1960-something. You're a block from home, squeezing the last drops out of the daylight. The street light hasn't come on yet, and then, through somebody's open kitchen window, you hear it, a hard rolling hiss, and 1 second later the smell catches you, and you're already running, because that sound is fish hitting hot grease, and that sound means supper beat the dark. Fried fish and cornmeal, the fastest crown our mothers ever wore, catfish, whiting, porgies, whatever was cheap at the fishman or free off an uncle's line, dredged through seasoned cornmeal and laid in hot fat. And here's why it owns this list. A thin fillet cooks in 3-4 minutes a side, and that cornmeal crust crisps the instant it touches the grease, sealing the fish inside, shattering gold outside. The food historians Adrian Miller and Jessica B. Harris will both tell you, quick cooking fish that could feed a crowd is the very foundation the great Southern fish fry was built on. Our people didn't just make this dish. We made it an institution. Hot water cornbread frying in the same grease, hot sauce standing by like a deacon, white bread for the fish that couldn't wait for a plate. And the old story goes the little fried cornmeal balls got called hush puppies from being tossed to quiet the barking dogs. True or not, I'll let the historians wrestle it. What I know is this: no dog on that block stayed quiet when the fish was frying, and no child stayed gone, Walter on screen, with feeling the landing. So here's the picture I want to leave you with. The street light flickers on, and it's late. The light beat you home tonight. You come through that door braced for trouble, and the table is already set. The fish is already stacked golden on the platter. The cornbread's already draining, because she heard the same clock you did. She just answered it faster. She'd been answering it her whole life. The light came on outside, but inside, supper was already on the table. She never lost to that street light, not once, not ever. Now, yellow cornmeal or white on your fish? Hot sauce or ketchup? Go on down to the comments and start the war. Defend your family's honor, because I know some of y'all are dead wrong.